I think we were a fairly typical couple. By we, I mean myself, Rob, and my wife Helen. We had 2 children, Mark and Kristen, who were in university, and we were empty nesters. Except for vacations and the prospect of the kids coming back after university or at any other time when they ran out of money. We were both 45 years old. We had known each other for 37 years, were neighbors and close friends in elementary school, sat together in class. When regular male and female groups formed in high school, we still sat together in math, despite endless teasing from peers. We laughed a lot and usually quickly tackled assignments. Almost equally, it seemed, we worked better together. One of us would find the answer if the other was struggling. Subject classes were easy. Our teachers were thrilled, often leaving us to our own devices. After completing our work, we discussed our ambitions and plans. Many of them involved travel and a growing list of places we should see and adventures we should experience. For my side, the teasing stopped when Helen became one of the first girls to mature in our class, and suddenly the guys started to envy. I suffered from an endless stream of boys asking about Helen or asking me to put in a good word. Her sudden development, of course, attracted a lot of attention, and as a result, we grew apart and for the first time in the last year, didn't sit together. We began to see each other less in town and at school, although she remained friendly when we did meet. I always felt quite average and knew that Helen was in a different league, even attracting the attention of older boys, which she seemed to enjoy. It was in that last year that all the girls, it seemed, developed. Previously ordinary girls discovered makeup, hairstyles, fashion, push-up bras, and fitness regimes. In my opinion, they all looked good, many catching up to or surpassing Helen. I was a pretty average guy, average height, average looks, and an average. Well, I carried some extra weight in school which didn't help my self-esteem, but somehow I got myself sorted out. Towards the end of school, I was surprised when Helen asked why I never invited her out. I explained that she was out of my league and it was hard to compete with the number of guys chasing after her. There was always someone vying for her attention. Her response puzzled me a little. "You should have, Rob. I've always liked you. You're funny, a good listener, and a great conversationalist. We've always gotten along so well, and we still have adventures to plan." I was shocked, but eventually gathered up the courage and asked if she really meant it and if so, would she go out with me. I was even more surprised when she said yes. After that, we never looked back. Over the next few years, I became more confident and ultimately found happiness, largely thanks to Helen. She was attractive, positive, and for some inexplicable reason, fell in love with me. We got married at 21, and soon after, we started a family. In the following years, we both made efforts to maintain our weight. Fortunately for me, a strong albeit clumsy interest in sports helped. After the birth of our children, Helen struggled more, but I didn't complain, especially as most of the weight went to her bust and hips, and in my eyes, she looked more voluptuous. However, she didn't see it that way. She didn't like how she looked and felt. When the kids went off to university, everything changed, and she started going to the gym and swimming club. She lost a lot of weight, maintaining her curvy but toned figure of 97/71/91 and reached her target weight of 63.5 kilograms. She was 170 centimeters tall, with long curly red hair cascading down her back and green eyes. She loved classic movies from the 1950s and favored vintage tailored pencil skirts, flare dresses, and matching jackets from that era. She worked as a nurse caring for the elderly, calm in crisis situations, giving the impression that she always had herself under control. I considered the best thing about her weight loss to be the obvious restoration of her self-confidence. She became more positive and reverted to the bubbly, enthusiastic personality I had met many years ago. An additional bonus was that our sex life also improved, and I was beginning to enjoy the empty nest syndrome. One downside of her recent changes was the increased attention from other men. During our marriage, she had always attracted male attention, but now it seemed she was enjoying that attention more than before. In my opinion, she was flirting, but whenever I brought it up, she brushed it off, saying she was just being friendly. It reached a breaking point at her Christmas party, where she spent a lot of time dancing with doctors from her hospital. In the breaks between dances, she chatted with this same group of 5 or 6 guys. At first, I was happy for her, but it quickly became tiresome, especially when, after some drinks, one of them started getting handsy. I started to get a bit flustered when an elegant lady, whom I vaguely recognized, took me by the hand and invited me to dance. As we danced, she introduced herself as Vanessa and explained that she works with Helen, which clarified my memories. She mentioned that she saw me and didn't want me to stand alone without company. I wondered if she was interfering in Helen's affairs. After the dance, she led me to a group of attractive and professionally dressed women and introduced me to them. They were all very talkative and friendly, sometimes placing a hand on my shoulder or touching my hand. I didn't understand what was happening. Soon after, a guy approached me and said that I was being too friendly with his wife. I replied that I had no idea who his wife was when Vanessa turned to him with a fierce look in her eyes. "You've got some nerve, Bill, sticking to Helen for a whole hour. I'd advise you to warn your friends about it, or else tonight you won't be the only one sleeping on the couch." The other women in the group watched as a very nervous Bill retreated to his own group. A few short conversations later, and the guys around Helen seemed to disperse. Vanessa apologized for the mini scene but said it needed to be said and asked if I was okay. The truth was that there wasn't any. I brought this up with Helen, but she dismissed it as harmless flirting. When I told her about Vanessa and Bill, she lost some of her bravado. I also speculated that she might need to mend fences with another woman. I continued, "Honestly, Helen, I don't blame the guys. It was real flirting, and it was obvious that you were enjoying the attention. Have you ever thought about how I feel about it?" I managed to get some half-hearted apologies, but irritated by such a response, I insisted that we leave the party early. We rode home in silence and gloomily in a taxi. Sitting in the kitchen, I broached the subject again. She completely changed tactics, admitting that the party was thrilling. She enjoyed the attention from men, and she felt desired again, which significantly boosted her self-esteem. She went on, "I'm sorry if it bothered you, but you'll benefit now. I want you to fuck me." Helen had never spoken so directly and openly, and I wasn't about to refuse her offer. We literally ravished each other and continued to engage in the hottest sex of our entire 24-year marriage until late into the night. The next day, we talked about it again, and I felt a bit awkward, but definitely enjoyed the ultimate result. Helen explained again that she considered flirting harmless to others, but for her, it was exciting and a bit of a fantasy. She liked the sharp conversations and innuendos, and she was proud that she could hold her own in conversations with young, brilliant doctors. It flattered her to see guys checking her out, and she felt mischievous but safe because I was there. She asked if her flirting had aroused me. I didn't know how to answer. I saw how proud she was of looking so attractive and how she enjoyed other men wanting her. But there was a tinge of jealousy mixed in. What I really liked was how sexually and visually appealing she looked, especially in her retro-style flared skirt, which accentuated her femininity. She suggested that if her appearance aroused me, then next time we went on a date, she would wear vintage lingerie that I liked, and in return, she could indulge her fantasy a bit and flirt if the opportunity arose. I hesitated uncertainly until she grabbed me by the crotch, promising that once again I would be the one benefiting from any arousal. I tensed up, deciding I needed to take advantage of this immediately. I unzipped and pushed her toward me. Again, this was a novelty under normal circumstances. Helen wouldn't have agreed to unplanned oral caresses, especially without a shower beforehand. A week later, we planned a night out. Helen showered and applied makeup, going all out. False eyelashes, red lipstick, and freshly polished nails. Was she preparing for me, or to flaunt herself in front of other men? Either way, it was thrilling. I picked out red satin French panties for her with a matching bra and garter belt, black stockings with seams, and high-heeled open-toe shoes. They were complemented by a fitted pencil skirt with a thigh-high slit and a cream silk blouse that, when the two fabrics touched, hinted at the red bra beneath. We sat on tall stools in the corner of the bar. I was content chatting and shamelessly admiring my beautiful wife. I enjoyed imagining what she had on under her clothes, and I thought she looked absolutely stunning. We had a few drinks, and I thanked her many times for dressing up, reminding her how good she looked. She assured me that she liked doing it for me and that it was really very sexy, especially the stockings. It was then that I noticed a young guy who was quite obviously checking out Helen. She noticed him too and seemed simultaneously excited and nervous, slowly turning to see him looking at her. I saw Helen's eyes meet his, and a faint smile appeared on his face. I quietly said to Helen, "He wants you to know he likes you, and the fact that I'm with you doesn't bother him." Helen blushed. "Oh my, he's so handsome and fit, but he can't be more than 20. After a while, I noticed that the slit in Helen's skirt had opened a bit when she crossed her legs, exposing her thighs. I wondered how much the guy could see from his angle. "Having fun?" I remarked. "I feel quite naughty. What if he comes over?" I responded somewhat uncertainly. "We agreed to do this, but it's just light flirting. We're not going too far." After a while, Helen went to the restroom. I couldn't help but gaze at her sexy backside as she walked away from me. I wasn't the only one. The guy's eyes were fixed on her. He raised his head and smiled at her as she passed by. I couldn't tell if she smiled back at him. When she returned, the guy said something to her. She stopped and began talking to him. I was so nervous that she talked to him a bit, and then, to my dismay, she sat next to him. As she sat down, the slit in her skirt opened again, revealing the top part of her stockings. My heart raced as I realized she did it intentionally, but I wasn't sure if it was for me or for him. I saw him looking at Helen's leg. It's a strange mix of emotions, watching another man ogle your wife. They seemed to chat easily and laugh, and from her reaction, it seemed like he was giving her a lot of compliments. I saw her nodding towards me, and I wondered if she was telling him who I really am or making up a story. She touched his hand, and they continued chatting as he leaned in closer. I watched as my beautiful wife flirted with the young guy, trying to deal with the turmoil inside me. Helen glanced at him, perhaps looking for signs of discomfort, and then winked at me. They kept talking. It had probably been 20 minutes already. Then I saw his hand appear behind her, and she subtly shifted position. I couldn't tell if his hand slid slightly lower, and I wondered if he was holding her butt. Then I saw him turn towards her, placing his second hand on her thigh. Helen gazed into his eyes with a slightly dreamy expression. Surely she wouldn't let things go that far, would she? I got my answer when he leaned in and gently kissed her lips. It lasted seconds but felt like hours. My heart was racing so fast. My wife was kissing someone else right in front of me, and I just stood there watching. I stood up and forced my legs to move by sheer willpower. Helen looked at me with a flushed face and a nervous gaze. Seeing my distress, she quickly got up, hurriedly said goodbye, grabbed me, and pulled me out of the bar. Once we were on the street, Helen asked if I was okay. I mumbled something evasive in response. Her agitation was obvious. She started babbling. His name was Matt. He was very calm and very nice. She told him who I was and what we were doing. This led to him offering to touch her and kiss her. She continued, "Being in another man's embrace while you watch was so exhilarating." I was nervous and excited. I admitted to him that I was very turned on, but I needed to come back to you. My attention was drawn to her use of the word needed rather than wanted. When we got home, we practically tore each other's clothes off. My mind was consumed with desire, but even more so, I wanted to assert my claim over her. There were moments of doubt, wondering if she was thinking about Matt and why she was so aroused. In the end, we had sex twice and again in the morning. Years had passed since we had managed that. The next day, we discussed everything again. I admitted that I enjoyed the dressing up and flirting from a distance, but the conversations and kisses made me uncomfortable. Helen focused on how the sex afterward was simply mind-blowing and that she would like to repeat it sometime. I was conflicted. The kiss was both terrifying and arousing. I had to admit that I enjoyed it when my wife felt desired and much more sexual than ever before in our relationship. I asked if she was thinking about me or Matt the previous night. She admitted that thoughts of both of us crossed her mind, intensifying her desire. The idea that she could easily attract young, handsome men and be so direct and open in conversation with them was an eye-opener for her. She assured me that she loved me more than ever, and my presence added even more excitement and intensity for her. I had doubts and concerns about where this could lead, but our sex life became more frequent and intense. Helen reminded me that I had always gently encouraged her to be more adventurous sexually and to try new things. She was right. Being married to a sexually confident woman brought a whole new dimension to our relationship. However, I said that we needed to be cautious in our relationship and make sure that we both coped well with anything we might try. Helen agreed, and it was another 2 months before she asked to try again. And again, Helen prepared herself as I liked the last time when I picked out her outfit. This time the mood was more tense. Her preparation was very erotic, especially my assistance in fastening the stockings to the garter belt. All of this was covered by a tight-fitting dress with straps that accentuated her slender figure, and her ample breasts were supported and accentuated by the structured lingerie. I was surprised when Helen accessorized her outfit with an elegant gold anklet bracelet, but I didn't dwell on it. We headed to another bar and sat in a booth at the back table. Once again, I was glad to be in the company of such a beautiful woman who happened to be my wife by a stroke of luck. This time, Helen attracted much more attention, and I noticed a couple of guys staring at her anklet bracelet. I excused myself to the restroom, then for another round of drinks, and when I returned, there was a guy sitting next to her, chatting away. He was about 180 centimeters tall, looked good, probably around 30 years old, and seemed very confident. As I approached, he introduced himself as Liam and asked me directly if I minded him chatting with my wife. I hesitated, seeing hope in Helen's eyes, and nodded in agreement. We chatted as a trio, with Liam paying more attention to Helen. Liam asked about her anklet bracelet, and Helen shrugged guiltily, saying she just thought it looked cute. Liam nodded, and they exchanged glances. Helen admitted she dressed to attract attention and flirt a bit. Further discussion revealed our previous experiences, but we didn't decide how far to go. To my surprise, Liam said he had done similar things in the past, meeting couples on dating apps, and suggested a few tests to see if this suited us. He proposed a few actions while we chatted and relaxed, and each of us would evaluate these actions to see if we liked them. I was both intrigued and nervous, so we agreed that we could stop at any time. Of course, Liam affirmed encouragingly. Great, so let's start with this one. With these words, he gently took my wife's hand in his own and after a few seconds commented that he really liked the touch of her soft skin, rating it 7 out of 10. Helen readily agreed, saying it was also a 7 for her. Mixed emotions arose in me again, and I shrugged, but had to admit it was exciting, rating it a 6. See, it wasn't so difficult, and we're all still friends, Liam continued. He kept talking, not letting go of Helen's hand. About 10 minutes later, Liam suggested conducting a second test. He let go of Helen's hand and put his own on her knee. Helen flinched slightly, but then said it was an 8. Liam smiled, saying he liked the feel of the nylon and rated it a 9. My stomach clenched, and I mumbled that it was okay, giving it a 7. Liam continued, "What if I try this?" I saw his hand rise to Helen's thigh and gently squeeze it. She looked very aroused. "You have fantastic legs, and I just felt a hint of the top of your stockings. Women in stockings are so erotic. It's one of my favorite things." 10, he said. Helen seemed to melt slightly, sighing, For me, it's a 9. This time my stomach twitched harder. I stammered, "I'm not sure how comfortable I am with this 3. Liam looked at me and moved his hand back to Helen's knee. "Why don't we leave this for a while and see if you get more comfortable?" he suggested. He continued to chat casually, asking about both of us and genuinely seeming interested in our past and what led us to this moment. After a while, I saw him stroke Helen's thigh, then lean in and whisper something in her ear. Laughing at his comment, she placed her hand on his thigh. They leaned forward casually to talk to me, blocking my view under the table. After a few minutes, they leaned back, her hand still resting on his thigh. "Okay, time for the critical test," Liam announced. "This will determine what happens tonight. And now, I'm going to kiss your wife." Before I could respond, he leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a tender kiss like that evening. After a few seconds of lip-locking, I saw her mouth slightly open as his tongue slipped in, turning it into a long, sensual kiss. When the kiss finally broke, they looked at each other and simultaneously said, 10. They looked at me, waiting for a response to the implied question. 0, and it's time for us to go, I exclaimed or maybe whispered. I was in complete shock. Helen looked embarrassed, but Liam seemed unfazed and started talking again. Just relax, Rob. We're all still friends. It was exciting, but you're not ready for this, and that's okay. Don't be upset about it. We're just testing our boundaries. Why don't you guys stay here and have another drink? As for me, I'll head out." With these words, he looked at Helen, took her hand, and kissed it. "It was an absolute pleasure, Helen. Nice to meet you." He turned to me and extended his hand. "Nice to meet you, Rob. You're a lucky guy, and your wife is simply stunning. I think you both should applaud yourselves for spicing things up, and I wish you all the best. Here's my number if you ever want to get in touch."
Thank you for being with us and listening until the end. If you found it interesting, please subscribe, give us a like, and leave your comments.